Yes, so good evening, everyone. My name is Aina Kaluma, and I work as a renewable energy analyst at the Daures Green Hydrogen Village. And I would just like to welcome all of you to today's seminar session. So, welcome to Going Green in Namibia, the Daures Journey. So, this is a seminar series that we've been hosting over the past few months. And today I am joined by my colleague, Mrs. Raisa Garises, who will be today's host, and she'll be giving us the presentation on wind power.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Aina. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible, Aina?
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Raisa Garisis. I am a renewable and hydrogen analyst at the Daures Green Hydrogen Village. As a recap, before I begin with today's seminar, I would like to take you through a brief overview of what green hydrogen is and discuss a little bit on the project overview and touch briefly on the previous seminar, which was part one of the wind power. So green hydrogen is produced by splitting water through the process of electrolysis using renewable energy as the power source. Electrolysis involves the use of electrical current to split water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen using electrodes. So in simple terms, we separate the water, which we all know as H2O, into hydrogen and oxygen. Why hydrogen? Some of the key points about hydrogen and its role is that hydrogen plays a crucial role in reducing carbon emissions. It facilitates decarbonization in sectors such as the transportation sector, and it is seen as a vital component in achieving the goal of net zero. So I'll also just touch on what net zero is. Net zero basically refers to the objective of significantly reducing or eliminating green hydrogen gas emissions to as close to zero as possible. So the Daures Green Hydrogen Village overview. This is the project. So the project will utilize renewable resources, namely solar and wind, as illustrated on this diagram. These renewable sources will power the plant enabling sustainable production of green hydrogen and ammonia, and facilitating net zero agriculture practices. That's it. As most of us already know, that part one of wind power was presented by my colleague Aina Kaluma joining us. She covered a few topics on the wind energy, which included the introduction, the development of wind projects, including like processes that you need to take, like you need to consider the stages that you need to take in order to develop a wind farm. She also touched on explanation of wind turbines, their functionalities, and major components of wind turbines. Discussions around wind speed measurement instruments and techniques to assess wind speed through vegetation on site. She also explained the context of wind turbine in Namibia, considering factors such as logistics, skills, required permits, as well as costing of importing wind turbines to Namibia. So as we all know that currently Namibia relies on importing them, like wind turbines, due to the absence of local manufacturing capabilities. So now for the continuation of the wind power presentation, this will be part two of the wind power presentation. Please note that this is a technical presentation. We will mostly look at detailed numerical analysis. However, if you require further clarification on any of the information that I'll be presenting throughout the session, feel free, because we will gladly address your queries at the end of the presentation. So moving forward, as indicated on the map on my right-hand side, which is this map, high and constant wind speeds are primarily observed along the coastal region of the country, which is this region. The southern coast, particularly around the Lüderitz area, experience wind speeds ranging from 9 to 15 meters per second. So as we can see that it ranges from 9 to 15 meters per second, which is now this area close to Lüderitz. While the northern coastal area typically have wind speeds between 7 to 9 meters per second, which is now this area. So our project site is located in this area where wind speeds range from 8 to 9 meters per second onshore, sorry. So since we have discussed the wind potential of our country in the previous slide, I would like to take you through let me now take you through the detailed specifications of our project site. So a desktop study was conducted by GeoNet, Germany, to assess the wind potential at our project site. These are the results that were yielded from the study. In figure 1, the average wind speed at a hub height of 120 meters was recorded at 7.6 meters per second, which is now for the first figure, which indicates your average wind speed at a hub height of 120 meters, as indicated there. Figure 2, this figure illustrates the annual wind energy production. This is in kilowatt hour per year. So our site is projected to generate wind energy output ranging from 17,400 to 21,000 megawatt hour per year. These findings indicate a substantial wind energy output as can be seen on the figure 2, which shows that there is good wind on our side, basically. Moving forward, we will explore the optimization of the project site, focusing on our own project site as a practical example. So this is the site. This is our wind farm layout. So this is the site that was identified for installing our wind turbines. So micrositing involves strategically positioning wind turbines within a designated area, like this one that is zoned off. This is to enhance the overall energy output of the plant. So for 1 square kilometer of the wind land, that can host 5 to 7 megawatt of potential installed capacity. So if you take, for example, 100 megawatt wind farm, this wind farm will need 15 to 20 square kilometers of land to have that 100 megawatt potential installed capacity. So in our case, for our project site, I'm not sure whether you have consulted our booklet. So there it also indicates that our project site is 15,000 hectares, which will be equivalent to 150 square kilometers, which means that our site can host 1.05 gigawatt of potential installed capacity. So moving on, GeoNet made use of 100 wind turbines rated at 5.9 megawatt each. This was to optimize the micrositing of the wind turbine. So each turbine had a hub height, of 120 meters, and the distance between each turbine was 6 times the rotor diameter. So those turbines that I'm referring to are the 100 turbines that you can see in the zoned off area. And each of them were rated at 5.9 megawatt at a hub height of 120 meters. So having this 100 turbines, you will be able to generate a total wind power output of 590 megawatt, but this will be exclusive of all losses. Sorry. So moving on, this is now another method that we make use of to optimize our wind site. It's called the Bloomberg Wind Capacity Factor tool. So this tool, what it does, it basically analyzes your data for various wind turbine models at different hub heights. Then it compares the capacity factors and power generation of each turbine over a specific period. So I'll just touch on what a capacity factor is. A capacity factor represents the ratio of your actual, energy produced or supplied during a definite period to the maximum plant rated within that same period. So it basically means it's your actual energy produced over your rated power for your wind farm. So in simple terms, it indicates how frequently a plant operates at its maximum power. So I'll just go a little bit deeper into the functionalities of this Bloomberg tool. So what you need as your inputs in order to generate your output is basically your coordinates of the site. your wind farm capacity, which is your rated power for that specific site, the operational years, which is the data collected over a specific period or the desired lifespan of the plant, the turbine make and models. Bloomberg comes with thousands of this turbine makes and models, but it gives you an option to add additional models based on the type of make or model that you want for your specific wind farm. But in order to do this, you will need your power curve for that specific turbine to model it into this system, or this tool, rather. So you also need your hub height of the wind turbines. And then with this input, you can generate outputs, including your average wind speed, your power generation over the selected period, and the hourly capacity factor. So I'll just take you guys through this part of the slide, the blue area of the slide, just to show you exactly what I mean by hourly capacity factor. Okay, so what you can see here is that this information was recorded over 1 year, which was 2011, and it generated your wind capacity for per hour, like on an hourly rate, meaning that it took or it generated your capacity factor for your wind from midnight 12 o'clock to the 4 o'clock afternoon time. And with this, you can see that it showcases the capacity factor on an hourly basis. And it also offers insights into the hours with favorable winds, as you can see, from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, you have good winds. And those with minimal or no wind, you can see that here around 6 in the morning, between 6 in the morning and 8 in the morning, you don't have wind at all. And then you can also see that you have little wind. I think it's because it's picking up from 5 a.m. So by conducting a time series analysis with this data that you have generated from Bloomberg, you can identify the hours of the years and day that experience optimal wind speeds at your project site. This analysis also aids in incorporating or blending other energy sources during periods with low, like I showed you, or no wind. So in this case, this project will incorporate solar or the battery storage for hours that we don't generate wind or solar. So for our project, GeoNet identified 4 potential wind locations. As you can see on the slide here, you have 4 potential wind locations that were identified by GeoNet with their coordinates here. This is for the installation of mid-March to gather real-time data. Remember Bloomberg, it's just Bloomberg in the previous information that I shared on the slides, on the previous slide, basically just gives you desktop studies. So in order to get real-time data to do the comparison, you need to install MetMass. So what GeoNet did is they gave us potential sites where we can place this MetMass in order to gather real-time data over a period of at least 1 year. So this data collected is necessary to ensure a standard compliance site assessment. But however, for the pilot project, our team will utilize only 2 MetMasts. Nonetheless, we still modeled all 4 sites in Bloomberg to determine the most suitable location for installing the 2 MetMasts, aiming to achieve optimal results. So this slide shows the results generated from Bloomberg for the 4 sites over a period of 10 years. So the net capacity factor varies slightly, as we can see on the slide. For first location, it shows you 37.93%. For the second location, it shows you, because these two are a little bit close to each other, they are not really far, like their capacity factors are not far from each other. So the second one is 37.96%, the third one is 35.51%, and then the last one gave us 37.67%. So what we can see here is that the capacity factors vary slightly amongst these 4 sites or locations that were identified to place your MetMask, despite using the same
Raisa, you muted yourself. Can you please just unmute and repeat what you just said now? You're still muted.
Okay, I'm audible now, no?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. If I'm current. Can you see the slides, Aina? Aina?
Not yet.
Not yet. My apologies, everyone. Can you see now? Aina?
Yes, we can see your slides now.
Okay. So I'll just repeat myself. So these are the results from the generated. These are the results that were generated from Bloomberg for the 4 sites over the period of 10 years, as indicated. As indicated on the slides here. So the net capacity factor varies slightly among the 4 sites, even though you have the same turbine make. This is because the 4 sites are not at the same location. So you will definitely experience different wind speeds. And that's why you have the slight discrepancies between the 4 sites. So these are the results that were generated. You will see that for the first and the second location. I know who's that? Can you mute your- Okay. So for the first and the second location, you can see that capacity factors are slightly the same. This is because these two locations are quite close to each other. But the discrepancy that you can see between the four locations, it's due to different locations, like sites that were selected. Obviously, you will have different wind speeds. So a typical wind capacity factor for existing wind farms generally fall between the range of 25% to 45%. So based on the results obtained from Bloomberg, which are these results, and comparing them with the wind capacity factors of a typical existing wind farm, we can conclude that the figures that you see here, the results from the Bloomberg tool, indicate promising potential for wind energy of these specific sites. So for this slide, I'll touch on a different way of optimizing your wind site. This is by selecting the most suitable wind turbines that will generate a higher capacity factor. So how did we get to this results? So what we did was all existing wind turbines in the Bloomberg tool were modeled. So this was done across all the 100 microsites that were indicated in the previous slides. And the average capacity factor, which is this factor, was calculated for each turbine. So what happened was for T2, T2 was modeled over all the 100 microsites, and the average of that was taken, and that gave us the 61.04%. So in the top table, we focused on top 5 models based on their capacity factors. And one can see that it's notably, so you can see that in this table, it's clear that T2, when you compare T2 versus T5, it can be observed that T2 has a shorter hub height, resulting in a smaller rotor diameter compared to T5. So T5's hub height is 105 and T2's hub height is 80, which means the rotor diameter for T2 will be smaller. So as a result, T2 will require less wind strength because it will have shorter rotors. So it will require less wind strength for rotation compared to T5. Moving on, in the last table, the capacity factors for higher rated turbines are compared. So we can see that the rating of the second table turbines is more than that of the first table. Basically, because the first table, we were only focusing on the hub height and the average capacity factor. But for the second table, we will look at the turbines with a higher power output and their average capacity factor. So in the last table, as you can see this table, the capacity factor for higher rated turbines are compared. Yeah? This comparison was made to identify, we basically wanted to identify with a rated power that is close to the that is close to 5.9 megawatt that GeoNet initially indicated in their study. So we wanted to use that information to find ways to optimize our farm. But because the Pt.2 models that are available, the maximum output power for that model that's available is 5 megawatts. So we couldn't reach the 5.9 that was initially indicated in the desktop study by Geonet. So what we did is we took turbines that ranged between 4 to 5 megawatts just to see that which turbines will give us the optimization that we need and how many turbines we will need, because all this will affect the cost of the project. It will affect how many turbines that you need to install, and it will also contribute to the improved generation of the output that you will have for your wind farm. So in other words, we can say that the information gathered from this table can help us to assist us in optimizing the farm, which is by calculating the number of models, like the number of turbines that we will need in order to achieve the desired rated power output, like I previously indicated. So in this case, we will need 590 megawatt as our output. So we can use the 3 that are now the maximum that Bloomberg provides to see how we can optimize the site. But like I said, all this will affect your number of turbines that you will need. It will affect your hub height, because most of this have different hub heights. It will also affect your costing for the project, because you might just need more or less. So it will be positive, or it will contribute positively or negatively to your project. So to also touch on the technology side of this, why we have, say for instance, 4.2 megawatt turbine generating only 42.63% of the capacity factor, compared to that of the turbine rated 4.5 megawatt. This can also be influenced by the manufacturer, the major components that are used, maybe the type of components that each supplier make use of. It can be that it's an old type of model, the rest are most probably advanced. So there are factors that can influence this as well, related to technology. So when you are assessing your wind resource on a designated site, these are some of the things you need to take into consideration. For example, your wind measurements at multiple heights. Like it was shown in the previous slide, you have different heights that you can measure your wind at based on your specifications for a certain turbine. The duration of measurement is 1 year or more. This is a standard. You can't go less than a year. So your duration should be a year or more. Class A, calibrated anemometers and other quality and calibrated instruments. So you should ensure that all your instruments are calibrated at Class A when you make use of them. When measurement is done within an acceptable distance of site, wind measurement is done within an acceptable distance of site. That will include your zoned off area, the distance between the turbines, and the clearance for your rotors, sorry. Proper location and configuration of mid-towers. That is also very important, like GeoNet also had to identify that. However, it was a desktop study, but proper location, like clear location on a clear land where nothing can affect your readings. Average maximum and minimum and standard deviation of wind speed are recorded every 10 to 15 minutes. Then you also need to take into consideration your data, your wind data management. Is it auditable? Documented logic for processing wind speed data, your wind modeling with appropriate consideration for terrain, roughness, convection, stability, and others. This wind modeling, GeoNet modeled that, and they considered this as well, because in their studies, they indicated that the type of landscape we had and how they had to move the turbines around or move the location around based on the roughness of the terrain that is available on site. Then you need to consider the long-term correction. It needs to be applied. The losses have to be quantified. Long-term correction has to be applied. Sorry, that is repeating. The average annual energy production is computed. So that is also very important to always take note of that. Then in order to increase your wind turbine energy production, you can increase your hub height. That's one of the strategies that you can use that can potentially lead to a higher energy production. However, this can also have a negative impact on your costing, additional costing that can be associated with taller turbines or bigger turbines in the case that you increase your hub height. So you need to do a thorough cost-benefit analysis. This will help you to determine if the investment in a taller turbine is economically viable, in order to see if you are having whether you get your money back through the long run. Another one that can assist with the increasing of your energy production is to optimize, is to relocate or replace your turbines. Turbines mostly that don't generate bigger outputs, like turbines that generate lower power output. This can be identified by this can be identified by, sorry. So by identifying underperforming turbines and replacing them with more efficient models, or relocating them to areas with higher wind resources. So that can also help increase your energy production. This is a picture of our project site where the wind turbines will be installed. The primary reason why we selected the site, the specific site, was because of the potential that it has, or let's rather say it is favorable when you need to combine the two wind and solar, because it gives you a high wind speeds, and it also gives you high solar radiation potentials. As you can see, the site is open. It's in an open area. It's also far from residential areas. which will ensure that local communities will not be displaced or significantly affected by any noise that is generated by the wind turbines. We have come to the end of this session. Thank you all for attending the session. I will now open the floor for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Raisa, for your very, very informative presentation. So if any of you within the audience have any more questions, we have about 6 minutes left for this session. So if you have any questions, you can just put them in the chat and we will get to them. And if we don't have enough time to get to them, then you can also just email us with your questions and we will get back to you. I'll just write the chat into I write the email address that you should email into the chat box. Okay, so we have one question in the chat box and we have a few hands that have been raised. So we'll look at the question in the chat box first. So the first question is from Andrew, and Andrew is asking, what does the new data say? 2011 was a long time ago. So Raisa, would you like to answer that question or should I answer it?
I can answer it, you can answer it, it doesn't matter. Okay, but thank you for the question. The reason why we modeled, actually the modeling was done over 10 years. That was just used to show how the tool works, how the information is being generated, or yeah, basically. Maybe you can add, Aina.
Yes, so the data was run over 10 years. It was run between 2011 and 2020. So with Bloomberg, they're constantly updating their service. So there will be some more recent data over the past few years, or in 2021. There's also data for 2021 as well, but so we can actually get some real-time data. We'll be putting up the MetMOS so we can actually see what our wind resource on our site looks like right now. So I see Paulus. Paulus has his hand up. So Paulus, you can just unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, Raisa, for the insightful presentation. So I actually have 2 or 3 questions for you. The first one is, okay, in terms of your analysis, what are your input parameters to the model? Let me say, okay, apart from the what is this built-in libraries of the turbines and the location that you have input, what other parameters have you added into the model? And then the second question is on the area of the blades. So is that something that you have considered in your analysis, and how does it affect the capacity factor? And then the third question, what are the limitations that you have encountered in terms of using the optimization of the Bloomberg tool? That's actually not the last one. The last one is in terms of the height. You mentioned that you can increase the production by increasing the height of your turbine, but then your results say something else in terms of if you do a comparison between the 80 and the 109 or 105, I think. I think there's like a 20% difference in that case. So how do you justify that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. I didn't get your name. Thomas. No,
Oh, it's actually Paulus.
Paulus. Paulus, can you repeat the first question? I only got the second question.
The first question is on your input parameters. What are your input parameters in the model itself, in the tool itself, apart from the built-in turbine library, I think, and your location? What else did you input?
So I've touched on that on the slides, but I'll repeat it. Your required inputs are your coordinates, like you mentioned, your rated power for your plant, your wind farm, your, what is the other one? The years, the operational year, how long you want your farm to be generating. Aina, did I miss something?
No.
That's basically it.
Okay.
And the second question of the comparison, I also mentioned that technology plays a big role as well. Remember that all these turbines that are part of the Bloomberg tool are not all of them are advanced like their latest technology. Most of them are old, and that can also affect your capacity factor. Did I answer your question, the second question?
I don't think so.
Okay. Another.
Okay, so if you do a comparison between a bigger or a bigger sweep area or blades with a higher area or a bigger area in a smaller one, which one would you recommend, or which one would you say would give us an optimal output? So,
That's an open question. Like I said, in order to optimize your side, it's not about how big your blade is, or yeah, it's not about, it doesn't only focus on how big your blade is. You should look at other factors as well. Your wind speeds at the location, you can have one on one side, and you can have three that does the same thing as one can do. So it has a lot of other factors that goes into it. It's not just having a big blade. Although, and another thing also, it's also another thing also that affects your output or your capacity factor is your rated power. So, for example, like in the slides, you had a smaller turbine that generated bigger capacity. This can be that this model is most probably an advanced model. It's new technology, hence the bigger capacity factor. So there are other factors that also goes into it. Aina, you can maybe add on that.
Just because we're focusing too much on these questions, I would actually like to move on to other people who are asking some questions. But before I do that, Paulus, I will answer your third question, which was one, was it the limiting factors that we encountered while we were using these tools? Okay, so since Bloomberg's terminal has about over 500 different turbine models within its system. And you can run all these models on your preferred sites that you'd be looking at. But one of the limitations that we've come across is that they also have decommissioned models within their system. So it could be that you run a model on your site, or you run a specific model on your site and it gives you positive outputs, but when you go do some research on this specific model, you'll find out that it's been decommissioned. So it could be that you have wasted a little bit of your time and your resources running these specific models. I won't say that there is another limitation in terms of models that aren't within this terminal, because you can actually add these models yourself as long as you have their power curve. But maybe another limitation would be accessing this, or being granted access to these power curves by the manufacturers of these turbines. Like if you don't have a relationship or you don't communicate with these manufacturers, there's no way that you can get their power curves. Okay, so let's move on to the next person who asked the question. Moses, you can unmute your mic. Moses? Okay, can we move on to Setson then?
Hello, good evening. My name is Setson Malakia. Thank you very much for the insightful presentation. I just have one question, and my question builds on to the initial question that was posted in the chat about the wind data. So the data was collected over a period of 10 years. So I just want to understand or just find out, were there any forecasting studies done, or maybe extrapolation of the data, just to determine what the sustainability of wind as an energy source will be in the near future? Say maybe how sustainable will wind still be in the next 5 or 10 years to come from now? Thank you.
Okay, I think I will answer that question. So in terms of the desktop study that was done by GeoNet, unfortunately, they didn't do any forecasting studies, so we actually don't have a view of this, but thank you for the question. Okay, I think maybe we can move back to Moses again, because I see he was trying to unmute his mic a little while ago. Okay, so Moses is still unresponsive. So Willem, if you'd like to unmute your mic and ask your question, please go ahead.
Thank you, Aina. Good evening. Thank you, Raisa, for the insightful presentation. My question, which I actually want to turn into an observation, will you be so kind to please open your table where I think the previous person touched on the sizes of the turbines, where you have size of turbines and the versus the production per year.
Okay. Do you see the slides?
Yes.
Yeah.
This one.
Okay. No, I
This one.
think yeah. On that one, I think it's now. I just want to really convert this in observation.
Okay.
And it looks very interesting in terms of I see on your table above the first turbine, it's showing. Am I correct to say it's 1.5 megawatts in terms of capacity?
Correct.
And then your hub height is 80 versus now the T5, which is the turbine model number 5. Now, looking at that, my question, or rather my observation, is to say the production per year for the smaller one is quite high than the one with a bigger capacity. In that case now, ignoring the average net capacity per year, would you maybe now, if I'm to choose between the two, would it be okay to choose rather the one with a higher production of energy per year, or you would still go for the one that has a high hub height with a low energy production per year?
Okay, I think I will take on this question. Based on the question that you're asking now, you're asking whether you should pick on the turbine that has the higher power generation or the turbine that has the lower power generation. And because this is a project for the production of hydrogen and it's not an energy generation project, would actually recommend you take on, and you need in terms of a hydrogen project, you actually need to have a consistent amount of power. So we would actually recommend that you look at your capacity factors. You shouldn't be ignoring your capacity factors because that's an important factor in terms of choosing which turbine you'd like to use.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can we see Kaunda has his hand up, or my apologies. So you can please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name is Kennedy. I just want to, from observation and what you just said now, that when you are producing hydrogen, you need constant energy output from the sources, which are renewable sources. Looking at the data there from Bloomberg, I can clearly see between, I think, if I'm not mistaken, between 5 and 7 in the morning, the capacity factor there is quite low, or there's nothing. And you said you need to fill that gap with energy storage, which the only option you have. Am I wrong to say that it's quite a big capital injection into the energy storage technology you use to fill that gap? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question, Kenneth. Yes, because we're going to need baseload for our project, we will be supplementing the energy with some solar energy. Actually, it's going to be a blend between your wind, your solar, and then your battery. And because the costs of energy storage systems are still very high, yes, this is going to affect our overall capex for the project. So Setson, you can just unmute your mic and ask your question.
All right. Thank you for the other opportunity again. Just in layman's term, really, what are some of the benefits of this green hydrogen to the Namibian economy? Just a generic question. Thank you.
So right now, actually, thank you for your question, Setson, but for today, we're actually only going to take questions that are in relation to the topic at hand, or the topic that was presented by Raisa. So with this question, you can actually just email it to either one of us or to our generic email, which is info@daures.green. I will put it in the chat as well. Or I'll just share all our emails within the chat and we will get to you with an informed question. Okay, so I see Jerome, your hand is up.
Yeah, no, but I think, yeah, in broad terms, I think, this is clearly outlined in the green hydrogen strategy, which has been put forth by our government, and of course is, spoken about routinely in many public platforms. For all intents and purposes, for example, when you look at, say, larger projects, like the project to be commissioned in the southern part of Namibia, I mean, you're looking at an intended employment base of about 15,000 people. And over and above that, the overall project capex, which is almost equivalent to, say, the Namibian GDP. And then furthermore, I believe there's also a commitment, for example, say with the project noted in the south, there is a commitment for local procurement amounting to 30% of the capex, which would effectively be about 60 billion Namibian dollars. And that's just one project. In that space, you could probably fit another few more of these similar sized projects. So I think the benefits with respect to employment in this industry, as well as tax dollars to be earned, will be significant. And then over and above that, I think we're all aware that Namibia is a importer of electricity, and a lot of these generation projects do provide an avenue through which way Namibia could become a net exporter of energy within the region. Specifically with respect to the Daures Green Hydrogen Village, to date we have about 26 people working on site. And then within our Windhoek office, we're about a team of 10. And as our project reaches further maturity, or as construction starts to gain further momentum, we anticipate having close to 100 people working on site just during the construction phase. And then of course for the pilot, once it's commissioned and operational, we should have about 30 to 50 people permanently employed in sustainable green jobs. And that's of course just with the first phase. I can't speak confidently with respect to the next phases, as we are busy with the feasibilities, but we anticipate that it can, and especially with a Daures perspective, it can and it will, provide a significant benefit to Namibia with respect to, as I mentioned earlier, employment, tax dollars, but also, the ability to start to, export electricity. I think the one other item I do just want to touch on with respect to, say, the Daures Green Hydrogen Village, and what we are actively looking at is we will be producing green ammonia on site, and ammonia happens to be a key component or a key chemical that can generate, significant amount of value through its derivatives as well. So, for example, ammonia is a key contributor into the production of fertilizer. Ammonia is a key contributor into the production of cleaning detergents. Ammonia is also used in the manufacture of plastics. Ammonia is also used in the production of blasting explosives, which are used in the mining industry. So, over and above just the energy, there's definitely opportunity and potential to create, subsequent industries on the back of production of, say, green hydrogen and green ammonia in a Namibian context.
Thank you for the clarity, Jerome. I will just go through the chats for one final question. All the other questions that haven't been answered can still be sent through to Raisa's email address, and she'll get back to you with the relevant answers. So one of the questions in the chat is, have you considered the cost implications around relocating turbines for optimum power production? Okay, so Jerome, is your hand up again?
Yeah, so I did want to come in there.
Okay.
So I actually want to ask for further clarity. Are we asking about turbines that are already established at other sites or in other territories? Or do you mean necessarily with respect to the Daures Green Hydrogen Village? With respect to the Daures Green Hydrogen Village, the micrositing that has been done in such a manner to try and select positions on our site that do provide for optimum power production. But if the question is with respect to the potential relocation of turbines that exist on, other lots of land or in other territories, this is definitely something that we are looking into. We are trying to, of course, find the most cost-effective means to result in our next phase. And if this happens to be the relocation of turbines, then so be it. But of course, can't necessarily confirm on that.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And with that, I will have to wrap up this segment of questions. So like I had said before, if you still have your questions that you still like answers to, please email them to Raisa. Her email is raisa@daures.green. So with that, I would just like to thank everyone for tuning in tonight, and we hope to see you in the future sessions. Thank you.